With me now is Rosie Duffield, the Member of Parliament for Canterbury, Whitstable and the Villages. Lovely to see you this morning. Look, let's start with the Chancellor crying in the House of Commons on Wednesday. I'm asking you because you once made that comment when you left the Labour Party that, quotes, it was like leaving an abusive relationship and that the party and indeed the Prime Minister had a woman problem. Did we see that play out last week?
I think by his own admission, he failed completely to notice that Rachel Reeves was so distressed, which is quite extraordinary. But then when you're up against it at the dispatch box, perhaps that is possible. I guess he was concentrating on his answers. But surely if you work so closely with someone, you've got some idea of the fact that they might not actually be able to go into the chamber. And she was damned if she did, damned if she didn't. We all felt terrible watching that, I think. I don't know what it was that was going on with her, but she shouldn't have been there.
She shouldn't have been there, I think, even if she did have a personal problem in the background that obviously hasn't been commented on. And I was just saying to Tim Montgomery, who was reviewing the newspapers with me this morning, there's a story in the Mail on Sunday saying the Tories warned Labour about Rachel's tears 17 minutes before PMQs. So there was knowledge that she was very upset before she even stepped towards the front bench. What is it with Labour? I mean, when you said it had a women problem, and this has been something echoed actually by Louise Haigh after she got fired as Transport Secretary. What's going on? Is number 10 too blokey? We obviously know historically they can't elect a female leader, but just speak to what the atmosphere might have been like last week for the Chancellor with so much criticism of her in the press.
I think, women who get in the way or who get a bit awkward get briefed against, i.e. the people who are paid an awful lot of money, the unelected kind of lads. Now they're in number 10 that were in the Leader of the Opposition's office and sort of dotted throughout those Labour networks. They're paid a lot of money and they brief against mostly women. If you look at since Starmer became Prime Minister, Sue Gray, Lou Haigh, Annalise Dodds, all of the people leaving, Vicky Foxcroft, me, all women. I don't think that's a coincidence because, I've heard recently that some other Secretary of States have been briefed against, but the journalists haven't gone with those stories, mostly if they're political editors who are women. It's all part of the pattern. Women who are awkward get shunted out of the way or their lives get made to feel very uncomfortable.
That's interesting. The other one that springs to mind is the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy. She's also been the subject of rumours, and Bridget Phillipson, actually, who I interviewed earlier, and we're going to play it out a little later. These people might be reshuffled out. Not really hearing that about any of the men. No, it is always the women. That's an interesting observation. Do you know anything about these rumours of a row between the Chancellor and either Angela Rayner or the Prime Minister? Have you heard anything from your insiders?
Angela Rayner is obviously not in the same political sort of wing of the party as Rachel Reeves. I imagine they probably do clash over things like the spending on all of the houses and all the other projects that Angela Rayner is in charge of. But I don't personally know any of those rumours. It's a very tight-knit circle and I've never been part of that.
No, fair enough. What do you make of a year of Keir Starmer? We were just looking at some polling in the Mirror that makes for extremely uncomfortable reading. Is he on the right or wrong track? Only 8% think he's on the right track. 55% say wrong. His approval rating is now below that. Let me stress that, below that of Gordon Brown.
It's an absolute disaster, Camilla. They have these expensive lads that I've just talked about who will spin things, in other words, make up stuff to say, it's not that bad, he's doing a good job. Certain loyal MPs will repeat that, but nobody believes that. The public aren't stupid. Voters have been let down. It's not what they voted for. If you vote Labour, you expect a Labour government, and that's not what we've seen from day one.
But do you think that the rot has set in now? Can they recover from this? Because we've got a lot of time, haven't we, until the next general election. We're all behaving as if there's going to be an election next week. There won't be. It'll be 3 to 4 years from now.
That's really true. And having been a reporter on this, in politics for a long time, that is a huge amount of time in politics. That saying a week is a long time in politics is really true. And we were all ready to give up on Starmer after the Hartlepool by-election some 4 years ago. And he did manage to turn it around. But I'm not sure how strong that turnaround was. I think that was the Tories imploding. So if he's come from that base there's not a lot to build on. If you don't build your foundations and your convincing story within the first year, you're standing on shifting sand. There's no progress to be made if you can't even get to the first solid step of showing the country what your story is, what you stand for. So I think there might be a few shallow gains and some positive news in the next 3 or 4 years, but the foundations are rotten, and I don't think they can come back from this.
So do you think it's more a case that they haven't got a vision that they can spell out to the country? That's been the damaging thing, rather than the U-turns? I suppose the U-turns haven't helped, Rosie.
But it's all of it. He's not a convincing leader, not only to the public, but to his own MPs, never has been. There's no vision, there's no inspiration. Look at all the people, the groups of people that have been let down, you know, OAPs, farmers, all the people that we constantly talk about, and as MPs will be told by those groups we're never voting Labour again. So all of they've let down that voter base. Working people are turning away from Labour. So I think there's so many things that have gone wrong that Keir, I would bet, cannot lead Labour into the next election.
Wow, that's quite the statement. Who would be able to convince you to return to Labour if they were leader?
At the moment, I'm not sure I could be convinced. There's always rumours that Wes Streeting is sort of between Wes Streeting and Angie Rayner, and I guess they're two different wings of the party. Maybe someone else will come down the middle, who knows? I think the public could go with Wes Streeting. Labour members and activists and union people would go with Angie Rayner. She's very popular with members. So I think it's a question of who they're trying to galvanise, and they'll need the troops on the ground to deliver leaflets and to get through to the next election. Wes Streeting's got a very small majority at the moment, so he's got to work in his own patch. I don't think whoever takes over is going to lead the Labour Party to victory in the next election, though, I'm afraid. I don't want that to be true, but I think Labour are finished for a while. Also,
we now have Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana in their own party, and apparently Wes Streeting is one of their targets. They're very much hoping they can unseat centrist MPs, if you can call Wes Streeting that, from his seat in Ilford North and others. How worried should Labour be about this Corbyn redux, this Corbyn revival?
I think quite worried, because I now sit on the naughty benches, as we call it, with some of those independents and Jeremy Corbyn. They're gaining popularity, and as Tim Montgomery was just saying, the way that we vote as a country is splintering now. It's not just the two main parties dominating everything. I think people are looking at issues, and that's why those independent MPs did so well. And yes, Wes Streeting's seat is a typical threatened one by those independents, because Gaza is a big issue there. A quick word on the Supreme Court ruling, because I've not had a chance to speak to you since that momentous day. And there are concerns that a number of key institutions, including the Department for Education, still haven't come up with guidance, in that case for schools and children who are identifying as a different gender. What's happening here? Do we think that there is some roadblocks being put up by the blob, Rosie? I suspect that civil servants are all over the place on this. We've seen lots of institutions not willing to accept the Supreme Court judgment. It's been a real problem. And MPs are still fighting against the Supreme Court judgment. Those MPs clearly don't understand that the majority of the public are with that Supreme Court judgment and are just basically about common sense. Not unkindness, not unfairness, but common sense and biological reality. And I think those institutions like the DfE, head teachers have been waiting for guidance since the last government. They need to get on with it, really. All right, Rosie Duffield, we need to leave it there, but thank you very much, as ever, for your time and your candour this morning. Thank you.